Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Yonit Arthur. I'm an audiologist and coach. You're on the Steady Coach. Today, we're going to be talking about one of the most common questions I'm asked here in the YouTube comments, as well as by email and on social media. The question goes something like this. I have this list of symptoms. It's usually a long one. Could this be neural circuit dizziness? And can I recover from these symptoms using the techniques that you talk about on your channel? To answer this question, we're going to be talking about a few different things in this video. First, we're going to talk about why we don't usually use symptoms to diagnose neural circuit dizziness. Then we're going to be talking about why so many different symptoms can happen with neural circuit dizziness. And I'm going to go into a giant list of the many most common symptoms that I've seen. For those of you who are sensitive to hearing about different symptoms, you'll be able to skip that section by clicking one of the timestamps. But stay tuned till the end, because at the end of this video, I'm also going to be talking about what normal dizziness sensations are and how to move on from here. Now, I've already mentioned the term neural circuit dizziness several times. Don't worry, I'm going to define that for those of you who are newer to my channel. But if you are new, welcome, and please be sure to hit the subscribe button and the little bell so I can notify you when new videos come out. Neural circuit dizziness refers to medically unexplained chronic dizziness symptoms. Essentially, these are chronic dizziness symptoms that aren't really explained by some kind of permanent tissue damage or disease problem, and seem to reflect an issue with how the brain is processing sensory information. In other words, neural circuit dizziness means that the chronic symptoms you're experiencing, whether dizziness-related symptoms or non-dizziness symptoms, are the result of a software issue in your brain. Now, notice that I used the word brain, not mind. Neural circuit dizziness and all of the symptoms that we're going to talk about in this video are not just figments of your mind or your psychology. They're not just your imagination. They reflect a real difficulty that your brain is currently having with processing information from all of the sensory systems in your body. This is happening because your brain is misinterpreting this sensory information from your eyes, ears, and sense of touch, for example, and not putting that information together correctly. This is what leads to symptoms. This happens because your brain is misinterpreting the information itself or triggers, whether external triggers in your environment or internal triggers like your thoughts and feelings, as dangerous. These brain changes are real, and the symptoms you're experiencing from them are real, but they are a software problem that is reversible through a process of brain rewiring. And this is actually a completely normal function of your brain. Our brains are constantly adapting to our experiences. For example, researchers who have studied musicians have found that they have different processing from the non-musically trained person in the auditory or hearing processing centers of their brains. In other words, musicians, through the process of gaining a lot of experience with music, develop better hearing and sound processing for certain types of sound than the average person. And these are brain-based changes that are measurable. So when you have a diagnosis of 3PD or PPPD, vestibular migraine or VM, MdDS, Malda-de-Barkmont syndrome, or many other chronic dizziness diagnoses that basically describe your symptoms without really explaining why you have them, you also have brain-based changes in how your brain interprets sensory information. But this is based on experience, and as your brain gains new, different experiences via all the other techniques I talk about on my channel, this process is reversible. All of the things that I just said should reassure you of a few things. Number one, the symptoms are not just in your head. You're not just being anxious, although of course anxiety and fear play a big role in how the brain interprets sensory information. So that is something that you'll need to address in order to recover. Number 2, the symptoms are reversible because the brain adapts to experience. And this also includes some of you who've had permanent physical changes that did initially cause your symptoms. For example, there are those of you out there who have ear weakness in one ear, or who've had a traumatic brain injury of some kind. Some of these things can cause the initial symptoms, but the brain can usually work around them and figure out how to not be dizzy anymore. When it doesn't happen, the initial injury or tissue damage that may have started symptoms doesn't explain why symptoms are chronic. And number 3, for those of you whose symptoms are really weird and you've never heard them mentioned before, for those of you whose symptoms are really intense and debilitating, no matter how bad they can absolutely be neural circuit dizziness, and that is something you can recover from. Now, because neural circuit dizziness means your brain's having trouble processing information, particularly from the senses associated with your balance system, which are your eyes, ears, and sense of touch, there are basically an infinite number of different symptoms you could have as part of neural circuit dizziness. This is one big reason why we don't usually diagnose it based on symptoms. I have an entire video that goes into a lot more detail on what you can use to tell if you have neural circuit dizziness, so please check that out in the video description and in the top comment. But the most important criterion is there a medical reason, a physical problem that explains why you have symptoms? If there is one, then you go and you get medical treatment. If there isn't one, we're dealing with a software problem, which again is a brain-based problem. It's real, but it's reversible. And finally, before we jump into symptoms, what I want you to know most importantly is that the symptoms that you have are almost irrelevant to whether you have neural circuit dizziness or not, or whether you can recover. And I certainly don't mean to imply that they're irrelevant to you. I know they have totally upended your life. I simply mean that no matter how many of the symptoms you have that I'm about to list, no matter how intense they are, none of those things mean that you can't recover. I normally record these videos without notes, but today I have an entire notebook with lists of symptoms that I am going to read to you to make sure that I don't miss many of the common ones. Starting with symptoms that have to do with your eyes. Delayed vision. So feeling like your eyes are operating on a delay or your body is operating on a delay in relation to your eyes. Blurry vision, feeling like things don't look clear or like you're looking through a fog or a dirty window, seeing shadows, halos, phantom images, or even after images, especially when you're looking at a lit screen. But this can also happen when you're looking at anything that has visual contrast, so dark against light or light against dark. Visual snow, floaters, feeling like you're unable to track moving objects, or feeling like you're unable to track still objects or moving objects when you're moving. Being unable to tolerate patterns like carpets, paintings, garage doors, or anything else with stripes or patterns. I've even seen people have difficulty looking in the fridge because it's such a visually busy environment. You may also find you're unable to tolerate busy environments like big open spaces with lots of people in them, like malls, or even grocery stores or outdoor markets. You may have light sensitivity, bouncy vision. You may feel eye pressure or pain. You may also experience dry eyes. You may have difficulty with night vision, and many people also have trouble with driving, either being a passenger or being the driver, because again, it's so visually stimulating to be in that situation. You may have trouble with other miscellaneous situations where there's complex visual information coming in. You may not be able to tolerate screens, particularly when you're scrolling. You may notice that the room or the environment around you seems tilted in a weird way. You may find yourself misjudging the grade of something if you're going up or downhill. And you may feel just a general sense of disorientation, whether you're moving or you're still. All of these symptoms are the result of the fact that the balance system heavily relies on information coming in from your eyes. And when your brain is not doing a good job of using that information, it doesn't do a good job of filtering that information. It becomes very overwhelmed by all of the situations that I described, because all of those require a lot of brain processing to make sense of them. If you want to know more about eyes specifically, I will link to a video where I talk about vision symptoms specifically. Check out the video description and top comment for that. Now moving on to the sense of touch, another sense that's involved in the balance system. You may notice leg sensations like jelly legs, feeling like your legs are weak, trembling, or tight. You may not be able to feel the bottom of your legs. It may seem like they're not even there. You may notice trampoline walking or feeling like you're walking on marshmallows or pillows. You may feel generally unbalanced or feel like you're walking like you are drunk. You may have a sense of bouncing, rocking, or swaying, and it might feel like you are swaying or bouncing or rocking, or it might feel like your surrounding environment is rocking, bouncing, or swaying. In some cases, you may even notice a perceptible sway back and forth if you look in a mirror. You may notice gravitational pulls, like you're being pulled to one side or the other. Some people will also feel like they're being pulled down or like they're floating up. You might notice that your body is moving in time with your heartbeat. There may also be a delay in your perception of where your body is moving, like your body is moving unexpectedly quickly or too slowly. You may notice your symptoms get worse with passive motion, like being in a car, and then some of you are going to notice your symptoms get better with passive motion, like being in a car. You may also notice tremors. You may notice that your body jerks. You may also notice numbness or tingling. You may also notice pain pretty much anywhere in your body. This too can be part of neural circuit dizziness. Your balance system uses a lot of sensory information from your sense of touch, which doesn't just include pressure, cold, or heat. It also involves information about where your limbs and body are oriented in space. So if your brain is not using that information correctly, first of all, it may perceive you as not being oriented, which can result in many of these symptoms. And second of all, your body may automatically tighten or try to compensate in some area of your body for the perception of being unstable. This is often why people have tension and pain. Okay, moving on to your ears. You may notice tinnitus, which is a perception often of ringing, but can also be crickets, can also be roaring, rushing, chirping. It might be a low whooshing sound. It might be intermittent, meaning it comes and goes, or it may be all the time. It may be in one ear or both ears. I have an entire video about tinnitus I will also link to in the video description and below if you want to know more about why you might have those sounds in your ears. Many of you will also experience sound sensitivity or hyperacusis, another one I have a video about, so please check that out as well. You may notice a sensation of plugging in one or both ears, or you may notice that your hearing seems a little bit lower in one ear or both ears. You may notice feeling like your ears have to pop or that they're stuffed. You'll hear people refer to that sensation often as eustachian tube dysfunction. And I'm not going to get too deep into eustachian tube dysfunction today, but when your brain is misinterpreting sensory information, it can have real reversible consequences in your body, and your ear may not be responding appropriately to changes in pressure in your ear. Some of you are also going to notice spinning vertigo. It can happen spontaneously for some people, and for other people, it only happens in certain positions. You may also notice that sounds or other sensations in your body, like your heartbeat, might feel like they're moving you because your brain is just so sensitive to any kind of motion. Moving on now to your head and neck. Now, we covered the eyes, ears, and sense of touch since those are very specifically related to the balance system. But the balance system also gets a lot of information from and sends a lot of information down to the head and neck. So people often have specific symptoms in these areas. You may notice head pressure, headaches, aching, throbbing. You may also notice facial pain or pressure in your sinuses. You might feel like you have a bobblehead, like you can't really control where your head is moving in space. You might also notice neck pain, stiffness, tightness, reduced range of motion. Many people also experience jaw issues or TMJ, temporomandibular joint issues. You may notice tightness, pain, clicking. You might feel lightheaded, and you might also experience something that people refer to as head rushes, where you suddenly feel a rush of sensation, kind of like when you get lightheaded from getting up too quickly, but without actually having gotten up too quickly. And another sensation people will often notice in their heads is something called brain zaps, or kind of like brain jerks, where your brain suddenly zaps you. And I'm going to include these in the category of head and neck, even though these are really more ear-related: dissociation, depersonalization, and derealization. Basically, all three of these experiences involve feeling like the world you're living in is not real, or you're not real, like you're living in a dream or seeing the world through glass rather than actually being there to experience it. This can be an extremely distressing experience if you don't know what it is, but it's actually pretty common in people who are dealing with neural circuit dizziness. Finally, some systemic symptoms. These are ones that don't have anything directly to do with the balance system, but because the balance system involves knowing where you're oriented in space, your brain can be really freaked out when you are feeling disoriented. And this can light up the fight or flight system, which can mess with pretty much any other system in your body. People with neural circuit dizziness often experience fatigue, whether that's in reaction to doing activities or just all the time because your brain is working extra hard to try to figure out where you are in space. You may also notice brain fog, feeling like you're forgetful, having trouble concentrating or tracking or following a conversation, or even your own train of thought. Many people with neural circuit dizziness notice digestive issues, insomnia, and many symptoms of physiologic anxiety, including things like heart palpitations, racing heart, feeling just a general sense of doom or panic. These are symptoms. Nausea is a common one. Yes, when you're disoriented, you may feel nausea, generally feeling faint or worrying that you're going to faint, as well as POTS, which is postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. Essentially, this means that with postural changes, your brain doesn't respond to them appropriately as it should, and your heart rate accelerates more than it should. I'm going to have some specific videos about POTS coming soon, so stay tuned to the channel for that. Okay, so I think we've covered most of the common symptoms out there, although I'm sure in the question and comment section below on YouTube, someone's going to pop in at least a comment and say, hey, I have this symptom you didn't mention. Could this also be neural circuit dizziness? And the answer is almost certainly going to be yes. But now let's move on to what normal dizziness sensations are like. As you start to recover from chronic dizziness symptoms, you might start to wonder to yourself, hang on, is the sensation that I'm experiencing right now a symptom, like part of neural circuit dizziness? Or is this just a normal dizziness sensation that anyone could have and that my brain is just overreacting to? I know it may seem really hard to believe when you're feeling like what you're feeling right now, but almost all of the symptoms that I just mentioned can be normal for someone without neural circuit dizziness if they meet the following three criteria. And those criteria are duration, intensity, and context. Normal dizziness sensations tend to be very transient or temporary. They happen and then they go away. They tend to be low enough intensity that they don't destabilize you or make you non-functional for a period of time. They tend to also be lower intensity than what you're experiencing, meaning your brain doesn't turn up the volume on them so much and they don't cause difficulties with living your daily life. And finally, context. Many of these symptoms are normal in response to certain contexts. For example, it's actually completely normal to temporarily feel a sensation of rocking when you get off a boat. And it's actually perfectly normal to feel a little bit of trampoline walking when you get out of a moving vehicle that you've been in for a while. So for those of you who are wondering if the sensations you're still having might be normal, and your brain is just increasing the volume on them a little more than it should, use these 3 criteria to help figure it out. I often use myself as an example of a person without neural circuit dizziness who experiences these sensations, and things like minor zaps, visual snow, having vision delays, slight dizziness when you turn your head, feeling a little bit lightheaded when you get up too quickly. All of these kinds of things are things that people without neural circuit dizziness experience on a regular basis. Our brain just totally filters it out and no one even thinks about it. Okay, so now we're getting to the most important point of this video. Now that I've given you some reassurance that your symptoms can indeed be part of neural circuit dizziness, no matter how wacky or intense they are, the symptoms are not what you need to focus on in order to recover. The real problem that you need to address is your nervous system's oversensitivity to triggers and to the symptoms themselves. When you address how your nervous system is interpreting those triggers and the symptoms, it's going to take care of all the symptoms you have, again, no matter how weird, wacky, or intense they are right now. If you want to learn more about how to do that, I have so many videos on my channel that it might be hard to parse through them all. Please consider taking the free course. Again, 100% free, available to anyone. You can sign up today. Just click the link in the video description or in the top comment. I'm looking forward to all the questions and comments on this one. Please like, share, subscribe to my channel. These things help me reach more people. Thank you so much. I'll talk to you soon.